I have said on numerous occasions that the genre of horror doesn't scare me. Out of the hundreds of horror movies, games, and television I have watched, there is only a handful that gave me that panic-inducing, spine-chilling fear that a majority of people seem to experience so easily. I chalk this up to a couple of things. On the one hand, I'm on the autism spectrum. What this means, in the simplest terms, is that my brain isn't constructed to perceive the world in the way most people do. Therefore, I'm totally immune to what most people find scary. On the other hand, I've borne witness to a lot of terrible things in real life that have desensitized me to fictional horrors. The combination of these two factors led to the construction of an inner fortress, enabling me to contend with the most brutal forms of fictional horror. Yet no matter how strong my defenses are, every person, every fortress, has its weakness. Once in a long while, I will watch or play something that slips past my defenses, touches my inner heart of darkness, and exploits my deepest fears, ones that I have long forgotten behind that multitude of psychic barriers. I will reveal two films that frightened me, both of which are relevant to the main subject of this video. One film that paralyzed me with fear was Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, but it's not for the reasons most people might expect. Mainly, I was terrified by Jack Torrance's slip into madness, which was, at least in part, brought on by a failure to live up to his responsibilities as a husband and father. The product of this failure was a murderous rampage, brought on by deep feelings of resentment. I, like Jack, tremble at the thought of crumbling under the weight of responsibility. I have felt the same level of resentment that Jack had, and I fear having any future resentment transform me into anything remotely resembling him. The other film is one that I watched for the first time a couple of months ago, the 1997 anime film Perfect Blue, directed by Satoshi Kon. That film's primary purpose is to make the viewer project interpretations onto it. I made the mistake of doing a video on it, and in preparation, I projected so many interpretations that I ended up projecting my inner darkness. When this happened, I had, in a way, gazed into the Nietzschean abyss, and then that abyss gazed back into me. And as I said in that video, I was left broken. Given Perfect Blue's uniquely numinous effect on me, I should have been more careful when I decided to tackle another one of Satoshi Kon's works. If I had known beforehand what I would be getting myself into with Paranoia Agent, I don't think I ever would have watched it. But because it, like Perfect Blue, was so heavily requested by my audience, I pushed forward nonetheless. Released in 2004, Paranoia Agent is a 13-episode exposition of all my greatest fears, including the ones I referenced from Perfect Blue and The Shining. Almost all of the characters in Paranoia Agent either fail or risk failing to live up to their responsibilities. Sometimes it's due to a personal fault, other times it's not their fault at all. Regardless, they are all backed into a corner emotionally, and the distress they feel is both so intense and so familiar. When I was contending with Paranoia Agent's horror, it became impossible to do so without simultaneously contending with my deepest fears. I never had a piece of media terrify me in the way that Paranoia Agent did, which is strange because, unlike most forms of horror, it doesn't rely on any common horror tropes, like grisly murders or dimly lit settings. It is strictly a series of characters who are unable to deal with life, but the grief and pity they elicit is a level of horror that I've never experienced. This biases me, as somebody who is almost never scared, to say that Paranoia Agent might be one of, if not the, most terrifying anime ever. Though I initially struggled to do so, I think I will be able to argue my case in this regard. Ultimately, I hope this video will encourage newcomers and longtime fans to revisit this brilliant series in the month of October, the time of year when horror is most warranted. Though watching this video won't completely ruin the experience for first-time viewers, I will still warn that there are spoilers ahead. The series focuses on several characters, but their stories are only permitted thanks to the actions of one woman, Tsukiko Sagi. She is a cartoonist living in Tokyo, Japan. She is responsible for creating a cultural phenomenon known as Muromi, a fictional pink dog that has spawned various forms of successful media, including toys and a TV show. Given the amount of money that the Muromi franchise has garnered, Tsukiko's bosses naturally want her to replicate that success. They want her to create the next big thing, the next Muromi. After all, despite Muromi's popularity, it is like any other fad, in that it will inevitably die down in popularity, so they will need something to replace it. This puts a lot of pressure on Tsukiko. If she cannot create a new popular character, she, along with hundreds of others supporting the Muromi phenomenon, could lose their jobs when the fad dies down. Despite her earnest efforts, she cannot create a new character with the short amount of time that her employers are giving her. On her way home one night, she breaks down in tears, becoming desperate for a way out of her current predicament. All of a sudden, a shadowy assailant comes up behind her and knocks her out. She wakes up in hospital with the authorities by her side. They talk about her purported assailant, who she describes as a young boy in his pre-teenage years. He rides around on roller skates and carries a dented golden baseball bat. Soon after the detectives begin their investigation, word begins to spread of this young boy who attacked the creator of Muromi. Just as quickly as word spread, more and more victims fall to the seemingly random whims of this villainous child. With no legal name to give this attacker, he is given a moniker, Shonen Bat. From this point on, the anime focuses on the unbearable stress people go through in trying to reveal Shonen Bat's true identity and bring him to justice, before he can attack any more people. Now, I say the process is unbearably stressful, not just for the characters in Paranoia Agent, but for viewers, like myself. As somebody who makes a living trying to explain difficult concepts, trying to explain Shonen Bat's true identity was, no joke, my hardest challenge to date. While we do receive some firm answers about his identity, those answers lead to questions that I honestly feel nobody has the answers for. Now, saying that might seem like a cop-out, like I'm avoiding my responsibility, but it really isn't. I will explain by providing a timeline of events. At first, we are led to believe that Tsukiko's testimony is accurate. The idea of a young child randomly and brutally attacking people is enough of a terrifying idea to contemplate. But as the first few episodes progress, certain events happen that complicate our perception of who Shonen Bat is. For myself, I remember thinking at around episode 3 that maybe Shonen Bat wasn't real, and that Tsukiko and the other victims, like Ishii and Harumi, were lying. But then the ending of episode 4 happened, where a very real Bat Boy named Makoto attacks the character named Hirokawa. I naively thought that I would just have to accept that my initial intuition was wrong. But as episode 5 and 6 progressed, it became clear to both myself and the detectives that Makoto was only responsible for attacking Hirokawa and Ushi, not Ichi or Tsukiko. This could mean that there's more than one Shonen Bat, but one of the detectives happens upon the actual truth at the end of episode 6. After trying for weeks to find a link between all of Shonen Bat's victims, one of the detectives discovers that all of them were backed into a corner emotionally at the time of their assault. Let's run down the list. Ishii was being falsely accused as Shonen Bat, simply because he rode around on roller skates and played baseball. This undeserved reputation ruined his chances of becoming class president. The stress of these rumors caused Ishii to hallucinate. Harumi suffered from multiple personality disorder. One of her 2 personalities was a prostitute named Maria, an identity she tried to leave behind when she got married. She never told her new husband about her past life, or her disorder, and the guilt of this drove her to insanity. And of course, in regards to Tsukiko, she was under enormous stress to create a new character. This realization helps the detective make the correct conclusion. The Shonen Bat, who attacked Tsukiko, Ishii, Harumi, and other characters was in fact imaginary. They either hallucinated him or lied about him. They used the meme, the legend of Shonen Bat, to achieve the same thing that Tsukiko did, an escape from the pain of reality. But here's where the answer leads to a number of unanswerable questions. Yes, Tsukiko made up Shonen Bat, but several things happen in the subsequent episodes that make us think that he still bears some degree of reality. The first and most important example comes in episode 8, probably my favorite episode in the series. This episode focuses on 3 people who initially met each other on an internet forum. These 3 people wanted to commit wait, I can't say that on YouTube without getting demonetized. Play Sudoku, but they didn't want to do it on their own. So, they decided to make a Sudoku pact with other people. At first, we are led to believe that these people keep failing in their attempts, but at the end of the episode, we realize that they were actually successful at one point. This revelation comes when the elderly man notices that he, like the other 2, do not have shadows. This indicates that there is some kind of spirit world, which is important because the 3 spirits encounter Shonen Bat later on in the episode, and unlike Shonen Bat's previous appearances, he acts like an autonomous agent and not a hallucination. In subsequent episodes, Shonen Bat continues to show up, and when he does, he not only seems like he is able to destroy things in the real world, but can also be seen at the same time that characters like Tsukiko and the 2 main detectives do. Does this mean that even though Tsukiko made Shonen Bat up, that he's still real? Is this like a Silent Hill situation, where the products of our mind have some degree of physical reality, that they can cross over from the realm of thought into the material world? When these thoughts entered my mind, I finally understood why people wanted me to do a video on Paranoia Agent. They wanted me to give a clear explanation for this elusive, protean demon known as Shonen Bat. They wanted to know when he was or wasn't real, or if he was ever real at all. I, like Detective Maniwa, sat at my desk for so long, trying to provide a clear explanation for what Shonen Bat was. I didn't realize at the time, but my life became an exact reflection of this fictional detective. Both of us were being pushed into a corner, cracking under the weight of our responsibility to try and solve this mystery. Eventually, this responsibility became too much, and without any hint of exaggeration, I, like Maniwa, started to go insane.
I think you're just tired. Take a rest. 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 Take a rest.
At the same time that the meme of Shonen Bat begins to explode in Japan, the meme of Muromi gains a newfound popularity. As we learn in the last couple of episodes, this is likely due to the fact that Shonen Bat and Muromi represent the same thing: a growing desire for people throughout Japan to escape their culture, which is predicated on hard work at all costs. Both Shonen Bat and Muromi act as emotional crutches, symbols of life's impossible struggle and the universal desire to escape. There is a slight difference though. Muromi seems to represent the more innocent, reasonable response to life's struggle, which is to, well, take a rest. In many circumstances, taking a rest is not only completely reasonable, but warranted. Take the characters from episode 10 for example. They are working on an anime for the Muromi character. This episode has a deeply meta element, because it points to the very real brutality of the animation and visual effects industry, the very same industry that produced Paranoia Agent. Long hours, firm deadlines, abysmal salaries. It's almost as if the animators for Paranoia Agent were crying out for help in the same way that the characters were. If anybody is deserving of a rest, it's the animators. But as Paranoia Agent demonstrates, a rest for an animator is only a temporary respite from the horror of their reality, one that never seems to change for the better. Due to this, Many of the animators behind the Muromi anime either go insane or choose self-termination. Unfortunately, what the animators don't realize is what episode 8 pointed out to us. Self-termination doesn't lead to a permanent escape. They, like the three spirits, will be stuck with their problems forever. The struggle of the animators, along with those of several other characters in the show, invoke the ultimate question posed by Paranoia Agent. What is the right way to respond to inescapable, crippling responsibility? Paranoia Agent seems to suggest that it doesn't matter if you're an honest, hard worker like the animators, or you try to avoid responsibility like Tsukiko, Harumi, Hirokawa, and others. Hell, it doesn't matter if you're like Ichi, where you're responsible for dealing with a bad reputation that you didn't deserve. All our destinies remain the same. We will suffer enormous physical and psychological pain, and we have to find some way to deal with it. Because of this, it is no wonder why the characters in Paranoia Agent rely on Shonen Bat and Muromi as emotional crutches, as methods of escape from real life. But as the ending of the anime demonstrates, those methods only work for so long. When Shonen Bat and Muromi disappear from the world altogether, as they do in the final episode, there is nothing to hold back our inner darkness. The inner darkness bursts forward, from the realm of thought into our reality, just like Shonen Bat. So, what is the right thing to do? What is the right way to act? I, like Tsukiko, have found myself asking myself these same questions many times in my life. I've earnestly tried to find the moral path forward, where I contend with life's struggle, but not so much that it kills me. Paranoia Agent keenly reminded me of the number of times that I failed to do that, despite my best efforts. Moreover, it reminded me of the fact that I am destined to suffer so many more failures, no matter what I do. Though Paranoia Agent provides no solution to the infinite struggle with responsibility, it does teach us how to correctly deal with that fact, and that lesson lies in episode 11. One of the detectives that was tasked with catching Shonen Bat was named Akari. He was the one who discovered the link between all of Shonen Bat's victims, that they were all backed into a corner and looking for a way out. He hated Shonen Bat, and had a uniquely good reason to. This is because Akari shouldered a great deal of responsibility, which he would never try to run away from. He has a wife named Mise, who suffers from a great deal of health issues, ones that make it very difficult, if not impossible, to find a job. Therefore, Akari works long hours just so he can support her. Naturally, this made Mise feel horrible. I empathize enormously with Akari's wife. Like her, finding and maintaining work has been borderline impossible for me on account of my issues. 80% of those on the autism spectrum are either unemployed or underemployed. I'm lucky enough to just barely be in the 20%, thanks to YouTube. But that wasn't the case for most of my life. Up until recently, I felt like an enormous burden on my family, just as Mise did on Akari. At one point, she says something to Akari that I have felt many times, that his life would be so much happier without her. Up until I watched Paranoia Agent, I must admit, I continued to struggle with that same thought. But then, Akari responded to his wife in a way that changed my life forever. He told her to never say those words again. He told her to not delude herself into thinking that there's a clear answer to their problems. All he knew is that as long as they had each other, and they did their best, they would figure things out. Though I struggled greatly making this video, more than I ever have, it was Akari's words that helped me weather the storm. If the frail Mise, with whom I empathized, was able to withstand Shonen Bat when he came for her in her darkest moment, then I could too. In my moments of stress when I was writing this video, I thought about the people I was working for. My parents, my fans, my fiancé, and I asked myself, am I doing the best I can for them? When the answer was yes, I felt a calming peace flow through my body, and I pressed on. Though Paranoia Agent made me feel more horror than any other piece of media ever had, I realize now that I had to feel that infinite horror, so I could see how effective Akari's wisdom was. And it was. If you like this video, please give it a like, that helps me out a great deal. Finally, remember to subscribe, so you don't miss any of my upcoming Spooktober videos. Until next time, stay yellow.